Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of SuperFantaFi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Lazarus, Season 1, Episode 7. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So I love that opening where we're kind of finding out about everyone's ages, and excluding Hirsch, but like amongst the main crew, we kind of find out everyone's age except for Elena. I don't want to assume she'd be like the youngest of them, but I mean, maybe Leland is. Because we find out Leland's 16, both Doug and Axel are 23, which even Chris is like, man, I thought you were 40. And Doug's like, 40? He says it like 3 times. 40? He's like, really? You know, I guess you give off old man energy, you know? Which is such a shame because, once again, black ain't supposed to crack. So I think that's hilarious that it's just like a thing of like, wow, you look way... I mean, I'm assuming because you're darker skin tone that you're black, but I mean, maybe he's not. Maybe that's a misconception on my part. But yeah, I thought that was hilarious. But it's like, it seems like amongst the main crew, she seems to be the oldest. Because Leland guesses her age. He's like, oh, 26 or 27. And then she's like, well, I'm not even going to give you whether you're close or not, because that'll kind of narrow it down. He's like, nah, the fact is you're acting like that way must mean I kind of hit it and like straight on the, hit the nail on the head. So, and then also during this whole thing, you have Axel literally found a flamethrower that he's trying to heat up, like barbecue some food on skewers, and he like torches everything. Even later on tries to eat it. He's like, nah, no, that's no good. It's like, why are you still trying to eat it after you burned everything to a crisp? But it's like, hey, like, why waste good food, I guess, even though like you wasted it by burning it to a crisp. So the squad is kind of back to square one, because it turns out after the FBI looked into it, despite everything, the cult from last episode, like, there was no interactions with Skinner. And yes, his brain might have been used as the mapping for Naga's, AI and stuff, but he still had no direct involvement with it. Like, I don't know if he signed off his permission for that, or they kind of did that on their own. Or in the case, maybe he had no connection. So they're back to square one, and the data from Naga ends up coming through, and they test it out. First, they're like, oh, is it a phone number? Could it be like run through a system of like almost like, I think Elena was looking through it like, oh, is it a cipher? But it turns out they're coordinates to 4 different islands. All 4 islands, however, sunk into the sea like 10 years ago. It's actually really sad and interesting, but it's like a global warming thing, because it's not just the islands themselves. Even places nearby have been like towns and cities have been also like, for the most part, are kind of underwater. Like, one of the islands is near Manila in the Philippines. Another's near Fiji. One's near some islands near Japan. Where was the other one at? I'm blanking on where the 4th one was. But yeah, like because it was specifically, you saw it with Axel and Doug. The areas they were in were like heavily submerged, as they were like making, like, you're seeing houses and cars like underwater as they're like making their way, trying to, getting boats to the island. I love that Chris straight up bought the boat she was on, because I'm like, this organization, once again, we don't know what government agency they're like directly coordinated with, or just their very select small group, but like, Chris bought a boat for like 75 grand. Leland tried to get a very specific yacht or whatever, but they were like, no, it has to be a minimum of 10 people for you to be able to get it. Granted, we saw him later on, so I guess he was able to either get a completely different boat, or he was kind of able to wear that person down. You have Doug taking like a plane out there, a very specific like plane to transport him there. And Axel also took a boat out there. And then I thought it was interesting where you see Elena like preparing drinks and some snacks, and she like kicks up her legs, because it's almost like they're on a pseudo like vacation run a little bit. They're going to these very like exotic like wide open sea areas, and she's kind of like, watching from their purview back at headquarters. So she's kind of basking, and it's almost like it's like a Lazarus retreat. I guess it'd almost be like, it's not the one-to-one, but it's without the fan servicey bits of it, it is almost like this, the anime and manga like cliche of like there's at least one like beach section, whether it's like a manga or an anime. There's always like that beach episode thing. Like I said, without the fan servicey bits to it, it kind of has that same energy. So I think Elena was trying to get in on it too and kind of enjoying everything. So it was interesting that Leland kind of brought up something I thought was fascinating. He was kind of wondering, like, once we find Skinner, that'll be the end of Lazarus, right? And Doug's like, yeah, that's the only reason why this group exists. But he's like, it's kind of sad. And it's like, oh, you make it sound like you don't want us to find Skinner. And Leland's like, it's not like that. I think it's just like, for him, it's like, being a part of something like this has been a lot of fun. Yes, it's crazy, and he had a lot of complaints about, his work environment last episode, but it's still kind of like, I mean, we don't really know if Leland really has any friends or whatever, so maybe he's always kind of felt like a little bit of an outsider, and now it's like, oh, he's with a whole bunch of other people, outsiders, and it's like, oh, this crazy group is kind of like a semi-family of misfits kind of put together, that he's going to miss this, so it's kind of sad knowing we only have this purpose, and outside of that purpose, once it's done, we're done, so I think that's what he was, it's interesting too, because there is this theme element of sentimentality in this episode, what I think is interesting, because Abel is meeting with Hirsch, and he's like, oh, like, let's go for coffee or whatever. And his driver or whoever, I don't know if that's like his assistant or secretary or just someone who works with him named Liz, who drops him off. And she's having this whole conversation about like, oh, you want to go see a Rembrandt painting? He was like, yeah, like if the world's going to end, I want that to be like the last painting I see or whatever. And she's like, wow, I never took you as like the sentimental type. She's like, in fact, a lot of people kind of start wondering whether or not you're just not actually even a human being, but an AI, because of how cold and pragmatic you are. He's like, well, that's the first time I'm hearing that. But she even says like, don't let the sentimentality be the end of your career. And he's like, I understand. I thought that was interesting, her saying that as he was meeting Hirsch. So I'm wondering if it's maybe this, we don't really know who Abel is in correlation and connection with Hirsch. We find out Hirsch has a deeper tie to Skinner, but we don't know where Abel plays a partner. I wonder, it's like, does him, Hirsch, and Skinner have some past connection? The reason why, because he's like, because of your connection with Skinner, I'm kind of using you. She's like, it's perfectly fine. She's like, no one had to ask me to do this. I'm kind of doing this of my own volition. So, because she wants to find Skinner, because she's like, he left me behind, and I need to understand why he's doing what he did and why he did what he did. Because she talks about like he's always been like a sincere person, and she's kind of like to a fault. And I guess like being a scientist in that regard, even he asked like, why is being a sincere scientist such a bad thing? And I guess it's like the world isn't built for that. That it's kind of like built on a system of like, you do what kind of makes you money type of thing. I don't know if it's like, if it's meant to be like a thing of he's an optimistic person in a very cynical world. I don't know if that's kind of like the like element that they're kind of going for. Because an element I also skipped over when it came to this episode is the, I think it's the polar ice caps in the North Pole are like finally like the last one like finally break, the large sheet like finally breaks, and it's like it's literally the day to the dot of like 3 years ago Skinner warned about this, and he got it exactly right. Then there's the whole conversation of, well, is he, now people look at him like a prophet or a god, but then Chris is like, literally people were calling him a terrorist the other day, but with the way the world is going, it's kind of like, yeah, there might be a World War III. And then the hop thing falls to the background, which is so interesting considering like, like the timetable, if Skinner's right, we only have 15 days left until like the first deaths start happening. But all this other stuff is kind of throwing the world into turmoil. It's like, you think like, well, I was about to say like, you think a ticking clock would kind of, it'd be a thing of uniting people, but it's like, no, it just kind of divides people even more. It's the episode kind of leans into the whole notion of maybe Skinner is wanting to kind of hold up a mirror to the world and even our protagonists start wondering, like, did Skinner send us all this way just to experience what he experienced, what he's seeing, and have someone follow him to kind of open their eyes to what's going on? Because they're all commenting on, like, it's actually kind of crazy because they're like, I've never seen the sea nor the sky this blue. It's like, well, Babylonia City, like, it's always so cloudy because of everything. So it's very, and they're like, yeah, many places around the world like this. So very few places in the world will be this crystal clear and blue. But the irony being, it's because this is one place that's completely untouched by humanity. Once again, the only island that was in this area ended up going underneath the sea for 10 years ago. So that kind of, a lot of people ended up moving to other islands, which ends up being, well, interesting too, because the guy that Axel is with has the condition where he doesn't feel pain. In fact, a lot of people, even though it's like not like it's a rare thing, it's actually a little more common. And it turns out that these islands that Skinner bought, he was basically buying out the people who lived there, gave them enough money to move wherever they wanted to. But like, he also got like some of their, I can't remember what the word, genes, I guess. I can't remember the word. I was about to say genome, but I don't think it was that. I don't remember the exact word, but basically he got access to their DNA. And now they're kind of thinking like, well, people who don't feel pain, a lot of this might have been the precursor to what eventually became Hopna. So, which is kind of interesting to think about. That would have never even crossed my mind until they like connected those dots. I thought was interesting. But like, the money that was given to these people was traced back to, was it the Hajj Research University or something like that? Which, it's like, all right, look at the list of doctors that were there. Maybe you can draw some correlation. And then whose name is there but Hirsch? They kind of hinted to, I want to say it was last episode or whatever, or maybe the episode before last. Once again, like, some medical stuff popped up and Hirsch knew what it was. And even Doug was like, he took notice of that, being like, yeah, that is weird that she was immediately able to read that. And even in this episode, Abel referred to as a doctor. So I'm like, okay, so were you and Skinner lab partners, maybe even lovers at one point in time? Like, what's going on there? There's also an interesting thing too, where they brought up like the prison in Arizona, and then like also referencing an airport, which I'm assuming that's the same airport or whatever that. Well, was that an airport? Axel, I can't remember now. That place that Axel was in with a terminal and stuff. I'm like, I think that might have been an airport in episode 1, if I remember correctly. But yeah, they're referencing Axel because it's like specifically like the intelligence division of the army is looking into some stuff, and then like Hirsch is saying like, oh, Axel would have answers. I'm like, wait, what? Why? I'm like, why? Wait, why is an intelligence division? What is that about? I was like, was he part of? I was like, at first I was almost like, did Axel serve in the military or something like that? And they're worried about him saying some secrets or something. Like, what is that? But then I also start thinking like, wait, are we implying that Axel was in a military prison? But I was like, no one was in a military uniform. But then I start thinking, do military? I would assume like a military prison. I don't know. I mean, he was probably like in a regular prison, but maybe he got sent there on like after being like put through like military court. Because I don't know. I'm reading too much. It come like, why would a intelligence division from the army like be connected to Axel? Like, what clarity would he have? Does he have some deeper connection to Skinner? Like, what is the correlation between this intelligence division looking into some stuff connected to Axel, and does that connect and correlate to Skinner in any way? I mean, it seems like Hirsch is the more direct correlation, but she kind of hid the fact that she has any connection at all. I guess she felt like at the time it wasn't relevant, but now it is, because it's like these islands, it's like the money came from the institute that I guess she worked at with Skinner. Like I said, I think they were either lovers or lab partners or both. But it's like, why didn't you mention anything before now? We've kind of been chasing our own tail when you could have pointed at us in the right direction. But once again, it kind of plays into the whole, hey, maybe all of this is because Skinner wants people, whoever follows him, because there's even something Hirsch was saying, like, he wants someone to follow him and find him, because even Chris was like, maybe it kind of changes perspective on things from that maybe it is a situation of maybe Skinner isn't the bad guy we think he is. Like, it kind of sucks that he's going about things this way, but maybe he's not the kind of monster that the world's painting him in, that lens through. Because it was a whole conversation again about the trumpets, and he's like, I'm not here trying to decide humanity's fate. I'm just the one who basically prepares like the seventh trumpet to be played. And Crystal's like, oh, what were the six trumpets? And looking at the state of the world, she's like, oh, the six trumpets have already been played. So it's kind of, once again, humanity is what doomed this world and made it what it is. And this one place that's kind of untouched. It has a connection to Skinner, but it's devoid of any human connection, of having any interference from humanity, ends up being perfectly blue and sound and great. So it's just like interesting. I'm interested to see where they go, especially with the tease at the end where we got introduced to those people on the boat. But because because Chris was out there with them and she was like, huh, what, another boat? And then like when she came back up, they were gone. I was like, it didn't even correlate. I was like, oh yeah, the people on the boat we saw earlier in the episode, it didn't even click in my head that might be them. But it turns out one of them recognizes Chris, even calls her by the name Alexandra. It's like, is that you? So I was like, is that a criminal group you're a part of? Is that some, agency group that were they investigating things on their own? Like, who are they? We don't know. But she did bring up to Leland like a couple episodes back. He was like, what were you before all this? And she was like, oh yeah, I think she said a CIA agent. And he was like, oh, whatever. But I'm like, maybe at the time I said like, maybe she was being honest, but it could also just be like, she could just be a hardcore criminal. That maybe she was with a group before and she could be kind of a bit of a con artist too. I don't know, like her name is Chris. I mean, not unless Alexandra is like her middle name or something like that, but I'm sure it's probably like that's her real name, or maybe it could also be a fake name. She could be doing like a little bit of a Sophie Devereaux, if you're familiar with Leverage, where it's like you have so many names, what is actually your real name? Like I said, that's if she's on the more con artist lane inside of things, but yeah, I'm curious to see where that ends up taking us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.